Hello, and you're very welcome to Cork County Matters here on Irish TV. I'm Pierce McCarthy. Well, this week begins the first in a series of programmes which we'll be featuring over the summer months on the group of islands off the west coast of Cork. As a Corkman, I ashamedly admit I've never visited these islands. Hence, I'm a little bit excited to meet some of the locals, find out what island living is all about, the history and the culture. The first island that we're going to visit this week is Cape Clear. I'm in the wheelhouse of the Dunanore with Shane, the skipper, an islander himself. Shane, how are you doing?
Not too bad.
So you were telling me there a little earlier that you kind of dedicate your time between both the mainland and the islands.
That's right, yeah.
What's that kind of living like?
That's not too bad. Best of both worlds, I suppose.
So tell me, what was it like growing up in Cape Clear?
Yeah, it was grand. This was pretty much the same as anywhere else, really. Only no towns to run into. It's pretty much like growing up anywhere in the country, I suppose.
And have you seen a big change in island living from when you were a boy right to now?
Yeah, I suppose there's a lot more people kind of travelling more regularly now, whereas when I was small, everybody always kind of stayed at home and they'd only go out to town or leave the island when they needed to. Now people kind of come and go all the time, and that's kind of the main difference that I've seen in it.
And I suppose an awful lot of the population of the island too. There's a lot more, I suppose, people who've moved in as opposed to growing up there now, isn't it?
There is nowadays, yeah.
And I believe a little birdie told me you got married there a couple of weeks ago.
I did, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, yeah.
So you're the newest newlyweds in the island.
I suppose, yeah.
So how's that going for you?
Sure, not too bad.
And is she an island lady herself?
No, she's from Skibbereen. So she's out there at the moment, and she comes in at the weekends, and when I've my 2 weeks off, then I go out and stay outside.
Ed, you're living here since 1979 on Cape Clear.
That's
but
right.
First coming here since 1973.
Yeah.
What was the attraction of the island?
It was hard to say, to be honest. It was an unusual community for anything I was used to, because I came from Manchester and I was teaching in the West Midlands of England at the time, and I just liked the place very much. That's why I first came here on holiday. We came by chance, and then land at the time was very cheap. And I'm not from a traditional farming family. I don't have any money behind me. I never did. And I could buy enough land here that I could keep goats, which is the thing I'd always wanted to do. I was actually a sociology teacher, but, you know, I've learned a lot since.
You've come a long way from there.
Yeah.
Since you lived here in 79 to now, how has the island changed?
The population has fallen. It was falling very steadily. It's been bouncing around between 120 and 130 for a while now. It seems to have stabilised. But there's a lot more people from outside the island than there were in 1979. I mean, we were a relatively unusual family at the time. And now there are quite a few people from outside. Also, the occupations have changed. I mean, when I came, there would have been 30 farmers, and there would have been several boats fishing from the island. The last boat fishing from the island, well, let's not say the last one at the moment from the island, stopped fishing last year. And the farmers, we're down to about 15. And what's replaced that, I think we have 3 translators on the island. We have somebody who runs web servers over in England, physically in England from here. We have that kind of jobs coming in, but it's difficult. I mean,
there's been a lot of change, really.
There has been,
because you said before you came here, when you first started coming here, I suppose the island was very self-sufficient, whereas now a lot of the supplies come into the island.
Yes, it's true. I mean, that certainly, I mean, one of the reasons the island's been able to survive with the changes is as people's tastes have changed. Fortunately, there's the Super Value supermarket in Skibbereen supplies the island 4 days a week. They send stuff down to the boat, and that's a key factor because it means we can buy anything you can buy in Skibbereen, effectively.
Yeah.
And then the local creamery delivers down once a week, which means you don't have to go out to Skibbereen to get your supplies. I mean, fairly frequently people do that because they have to go and choose something or find something or that kind of thing. But you don't have to. You know, you can get basic feedstuffs, fertilisers, fence posts delivered down if you need them.
And in the winter time, when the weather's really bad and the ferry's not running, you were saying to me a little earlier, there's still a little bit of bartering, which would be a very old kind of Irish tradition. That still goes on very much in the island.
Oh, well, I mean, it goes on all the time. I mean, certainly, well, very definitely amongst the farmers, people tend to cooperate quite a lot, when really it was always the way from when I very first came here that whatever people's differences, if it was to do with animals or boats, you know, they were forgotten. And to an extent, yeah, you get people will trade stuff they've got with other people that they've got. And on the other hand, we have a local shop and he sells quite a lot of the local produce as well, which means tourists can buy it. And it also means, you know, if you don't have something you want to trade, you can go down there and buy it.
I'm here in the Heritage Centre in Cape Clear. I guess this is the closest that we're going to get to the Fastnet Lighthouse today. We'd kind of hoped to do a bit of a sail by, but I've been told that there's 6 or 7 foot waves which are preventing us from doing that. So thankfully Seamus has joined us here and you're going to, I suppose, run through with us a little bit about the history of the Fastnet Lighthouse.
Well, the history of the Fastnet actually begins on Cape Clear Island, because the first lighthouse was built here between, I think, 1806 and 1812 or thereabouts. And that lighthouse operated until about 1850. And unfortunately, it didn't work very well because it was too high and sometimes it was obscured by fog. And in the year 1847, there was a very tragic shipwreck, a ship called the Stephen Whitney, with great loss of life. And it happened because of the location of the lighthouse. And for that reason, it was decided to put a lighthouse on the Fastnet. And that first lighthouse operated from about 1853, 1854, and it was replaced by the iconic lighthouse, the stone building that we know today, which was built at the beginning of the last century.
It's no longer manned now anymore, but I suppose looking at the fantastic video here that goes through the history of it, and it's really well done through a series of pictures. It's almost as good as video, really, I suppose, when you think about it.
Well, yes, I mean, we're very proud of this display of the Fastnet, and unfortunately a lot of people want to go and see the Fastnet, and quite a few of them do on finer days than this, but it's very difficult to land there. There's only maybe 2 or 3 days in the entire year where you can safely land at the Fastnet, and for that reason
the current and waves and
it's
the weather,
the current. There's always a tidal stream. There's always waves at the Fastnet. It's very seldom that you'll get it calm out there. So for that reason, we decided to produce this interactive display on the Fastnet, which gives people an idea of what it's like to be on the Fastnet. And there's some very good history and some very good interactive coverage of the Fastnet, and a lot of people like to come to Cape Clear and make the trip out and circumnavigate the Fastnet and then come back here to the Heritage Centre and to learn more about it. I think it's a very, very special place. I myself go there 2 or 3 times every year without fail to sail around it, and you know, I never tire of going there. It's just, there's something special about the Fastnet, but it's even more special when you know a little bit about it, about the history and about the characters of the place. So we on Cape Clear Island definitely feel that the Fastnet is part of the island in some respect, in a special way.
Yeah, I suppose that's because the original lighthouse was here, hence that connection with Fastnet.
That's right, and also for a lot of houses on the island, they see the light from the Fastnet. I don't actually see it directly from my own house, but I can see it in the sky above me, and it's a very comforting thing when you're living on Cape Clear or I suppose anywhere along the coast. Once you get used to the slow arc of the lighthouse light, it becomes part of your life and part of living here, and so people just have that thing about the Fastnet.
Original light that was put in 1904 is still the light that works there.
Well, one of the things that a lot of people living along the coast will say is that the workmanship of the people who built the Fastnet and who also built the piers and harbours back in the 19th century, that their workmanship and their engineering knowledge must have been absolutely superb to have built those structures that have stood the test of time. And it seems almost impossible, but it's actually true that the actual optics, that the light itself, or the glass around it, and the structure of the light itself is exactly the same. Obviously, they've changed the mechanical means of turning the light to an engine powered by a generator, and they've introduced electricity and modern, but the actual structure is the same.
Well, I've always wanted to own a goat, and after visiting Ed and his brood up in the goat farm, I certainly do even more so. Couldn't get out to Fastnet because of the weather, but thanks to Seamus for giving us the history and an insight into the Fastnet Lighthouse. Also, thanks to Shane, the recently married skipper, for getting us out here safe and sound. So, if you have an event that you'd like us to cover, you can email us, cork@irishtv.ie. If you're a fan of social media, then you can catch us on Facebook and Twitter. But just before you go and make that cup of tea, we got a bit of a brain teaser for you. What's Cape Clear Island also known as?